So, is there a quiet rebellion brewing in the heart of Hollywood? Well, according to one commentary source, a pretty significant anti-woke revolt isn't just brewing, it's already here. Today, we're going to break down their entire argument piece by piece to really understand the case they're trying to make. And that brings us to the big question they're posing, right? Is Hollywood's so-called woke era actually coming to an end? Now, that is a massive claim, and it's really the foundation for this whole explainer. Just so we're all on the same page, what we're doing here is laying out the argument from this one particular source. Their whole point is that this isn't some guess about the future. They're saying the revolt is happening right now, in real time, and some of Hollywood's biggest names are leading the charge. So what evidence are they putting on the table? Okay, here's our roadmap. First, we'll get into the core claim of this so-called anti-woke revolt. Then, we'll look at the comedians the source points to as the main voices of this movement. After that, we're going to dig into this idea of an industry in freefall, the supposed reason for all this. Then, we'll follow the money. And finally, we'll explore what this could all mean for free speech in Hollywood going forward. All right, let's dive into part one. What is the actual claim at the heart of this whole thing? What are they really trying to say? So the fundamental argument is this. The tide is turning. The source claims that after years of what they call woke control, enough Hollywood insiders have just had it. And they're not just complaining in private anymore, they're openly pushing back. But who exactly is leading this so-called charge? Well, according to this source, you gotta look at the comedians. They're positioning them as the canaries in the coal mine. So let's look at the specific examples they use as their proof. Okay, so Exhibit A from the source involves a clip of Bill Maher. He's talking about a new podcast category at the Golden Globes. But the key here, according to the commentary, isn't really what Maher is saying. It's the reaction of his guests, David Spade and Dana Carvey. The source interprets their expressions, their kind of visible disappointment, as proof that these veteran entertainers are just completely fed up with an award system they see as totally driven by politics instead of quality. For their next point, the source brings up this clip of Tim Allen, who was also in Bill Maher's show. You hear him making a distinction between pollution, which he calls a understandable problem, and the term climate change, which he thinks is just too broad. The source presents this moment as another clear-cut example of a major public figure actively pushing back against what's perceived to be a dominant, unchallengeable narrative in Hollywood. And this is how the source ties it all together. They argue that these aren't just random, isolated comments. They're signs that the woke facade, as they call it, is starting to crack. The big takeaway for them is that influential people are now saying things out loud that maybe just a couple of years ago they believe would have been career suicide. Okay, but that begs a really important question, right? Why would this be happening now? According to the source, it's not just about creative differences. It's about something much, much bigger. A full-blown financial crisis hitting the industry. So what's really pushing this change? The source's answer is incredibly simple. It's the money. Their whole argument hinges on the idea that Hollywood is in the middle of such a massive economic breakdown that it just can't afford to be so ideologically rigid anymore. And to really drive this point home, the source highlights this quote from actor Zachary Levi. They present it as a confession from an insider, someone admitting that the entire system is broken and falling apart. And, in their view, it's this feeling of collapse that's making people feel like, hey, what have I got to lose by speaking my mind? So if the claim is that the industry is in a financial freefall, you'd expect to see some numbers, right? So let's follow the money and look at the exact data the source uses to try and prove its point. To back up the economic argument, the source directly pulls from an article published by Breitbart. It's really important we note the origin of this data because the following numbers are presented specifically through the lens of this article, which is trying to paint a picture of an industry in deep, deep trouble. And this is the first huge number they put forward from that article, a $1.1 billion loan default. And this isn't some abstract company. It's tied to the historic Radford Studio Center, a physical, foundational part of Hollywood. The source presents this as more than just a bad business deal. They frame it as a catastrophic failure right at the industry's core. And the problem apparently goes beyond just property values. The source claims that the actual sound stages, the places where movies and shows get made, used to be booked solid, over 95% occupancy. Now, they're reportedly sitting at less than 50% full. This is presented as hard proof that the very engine of Hollywood is stalling out. The spaces are empty because the work just isn't there.
So, what happens when you have creators getting more outspoken on one side and a supposed financial collapse on the other? What's the result when those two things collide? Well, in this final section, we're going to explore the source's conclusion about what all this means for free speech in Hollywood.
Now, before we get to the conclusion, it's really crucial to understand how this source defines cancel culture. They're very specific. They frame it as a period that was basically a conservative witch hunt, where certain people were professionally punished for having views that went against the grain in Hollywood. So, using that specific definition, the source then holds up this list of names as their prime examples. Their argument is that these actors were previously canceled or at least pushed to the side because of their opinions, but are now being vindicated as this cultural and economic shift happens. And here it is, the final piece of the argument. According to the source, their ultimate conclusion is that the economic desperation in Hollywood has gotten so bad that it has essentially stripped cancel culture of its power. I mean, why would you be scared of getting kicked out of the club if the whole clubhouse is on fire? It's this desperation, they argue, that's creating a new, maybe chaotic, but much more open environment for people to speak their minds. So after laying out all of those points, this is the final question that the source leaves us thinking about. Is this perfect storm of creator frustration and market collapse actually powerful enough to completely reshape the future of entertainment? That is the case they've laid out. The question now is, what do you think?